Welcome back, everybody. It is the next episode of the Fearless Business Podcast. I'm your host, Robin Waite, the Fearless Business Coach, and I have got a very esteemed guest with us today. Our guest is Dan Chan, the Millionaire's Mentalist. BuzzFeed profiled him and called him Silicon Valley's favorite magician. He's known for unconventional magic and illusions, including pickpocketing and hacking into iPhones. Dan, I'm amazed you've done 330 shows, I think you were saying, off air as well. So welcome to the show, Dan. You talk about hypnotic marketing. What is that and how does that sort of work?
I blur the line between what's real and what is magic in certain things, but there is something that I feel that is hypnotic and memorable. Imagine if your competitors or your competitors' families chanted your name on their drive home, which was something that actually happened to me. And he kind of cussed me out. He said, my daughter was chanting your name on the way home. Dan Chan, the Magic Man, has a rhyme and alliteration. Rhymes and alliteration are hypnotic. You notice people like Max Lucado in their books have this alliterations that they're using, almost overusing it, but a lot of good copywriters will use that as well. So you'll see certain things sometimes, and I've actually noticed that in Grammarly, that they actually sometimes, if two words are similar, they'll actually suggest one that has that alliteration. And that is something that's very interesting. So Dan Chan, Millionaire's Mentalist has that alliteration as well.
Gotcha.
And people will remember that, especially if it's in your name or your tagline. I've had parents tell me, my kids chant your name on the way home. It's a little bit less subtle the way I used to do it, because when I said, everyone say the magic words, I would have them yell out my name, Dan Chan, the Magic Man. And they would say it 6 times in the show, because most magicians don't try to do a trick. And the trick overshadows who they are. I've had people say, oh, I saw this guy make a $1 bill into a $100 bill or something like that. And I'm like, what was his name? I don't remember his name. How do you expect to ever get booked back if people don't remember your name?
100%. It was really bizarre, actually, because how we kind of first came across each other, albeit I'm struggling to remember which way around it was now. You've just said that. But I actually saw you on a good friend of mine's mastermind, say Simon Severino. And I happened to join the call sort of midway through, I think, one of your shows that you were doing with him. And then literally like within about 10 minutes later, your podcast application came through into my inbox. And I was like, it was just really weird timing. I don't know whether that was part of the plan, Dan. Oh, I got the rhyming in. Does that work? Is that good marketing? I don't know. What other methods are there to kind of make brands more and people more memorable? Because again, the amount of times the small business owners will stand up and will do a 60-second pitch in a networking event, and then by the time like 20 or 30 people have gone around the room and done their 60-second pitches, I can never remember who the first one is. So how do you stand out?
I used to do this, which I teach as a free tutorial, and some people can figure it out, but you can see that. Or I'll change $1 bills into $100 bills, which has gotten me upgrades all around the world. In fact, entrepreneurs have asked me to teach them, and I started giving away some of my best effects, including this one, or I give them coaching on how to do that or where to find the resources. It's not about holding back secrets. Magicians think the secret is everything. To teach a business owner something like this isn't a big deal. People are guarding, or magicians are guarding, an empty chest, and people think it's all about the secret. If you're afraid of one trick being given away, then you probably don't have a very sustainable business advantage. And magicians get too uptight about this because they aren't willing to think outside of the box. For me, when I'm teaching an entrepreneur, like for example, if Bill Gates or one of the founders of Google were to ask me how to do a trick, I would frame it in a way, would you really like to know? How many magicians would show them a trick? Probably none, and they think it's all a secret. If it's mine to give, I would teach them one of my tricks, or I would just gift them a book and say, hey, would you like this book? Or I'll just ship them, I get their address and ship them that book. What other magician would do that? Now I have founders who are connected to me because they're like, wow, that magician, gave freely. That is why companies like Google have hired me over 40 times. It's because this go-giver attitude that I have, that I saw from Bob Burg and many of the other influencers out there. But it is not about the trick. It's more about the value you give and the network that you get into. I used to go to these really high profile people's parties. I did parties for Tim Ferriss of the 4-Hour Work Week 4 times, George Lucas, John Madden, and many other people. But when I would go into their houses, I would look at their libraries and I would ask for permission and I would say, can I take a picture of your library? And I would look at what were the common books on their bookshelf. And there were a lot of common books.
Which were the most common ones which you saw?
Right now, I think it's Ray Dalio's Principles.
Yeah, great book.
That's my favorite, but I also saw it on there. I saw him at a book signing in San Francisco.
It's an interesting concept. I've written a few books myself, and the amount of time other authors come to me for advice to talk about what, I want to write a business book. How much should I actually give away in the book? Because obviously I want people to come and do business with me. And I always tell them exactly the same answer. Give the whole lot away. If you have a 7-step process, like give away all 7 steps, because at the end of the day, one of the things which most people are always going to struggle with is the implementation, the taking action and the accountability and the implementation. As a coach or a service provider or a freelancer, like that's why they're always going to come back to you. And actually, there are business owners out there who have, for example, read Take Your Shot, and they've been able to apply the principles and, straight away gone out and doubled or trebled their turnover off the back of it. And I'm like, brilliant. We don't have to work together now. The only reason why we might work together is because you really want to work together. That for me is always a much better way to kind of build a relationship. I remember a client once who he had a very successful business. Again, he didn't really need a coach. And I said that to him. But one of the things we talked about, he was kind of like, well, listen, you must have got to where you're at now in terms of your leadership because of something which you're doing. What is it? I said, I read books. Okay, well, what books would you recommend for me? And there were 3 audio books, which I'd recently got my ears sort of into. And he said, oh, I don't have like Audible setups. I was like, oh, you've got an iPhone, have you? And he's like, yeah. I was like, do you do driving? Oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I credited the guy 3 Audible credits. And I said, here's the links to the 3 books. And do you know what? He signed up just on that one thing where I did that. I saw this and thought of you sort of idea. And like the Go Giver, Bob Berg, you mentioned that, is one of the best books out there, in my opinion, around sort of building that trust in advance. But also I think as well for you though, it sounds like the efforts that you've been able to go to from a marketing perspective, and like dig deep and send out all of those invitations to 800 emails a day. So it's like I said, it's not just about who it is that you're connecting with, but it's the volume as well that you're able to connect with them at.